Harawira.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, hurirana ki ora tātou katoa e te whare. Hoi no tautoko tuatahi au I te kōrero e pāna ki tō tātou kuia te whae o hekia, me hi atu ki aia, ko ngaro atu ki tēnā tu o te arai. Me te mea no me mehi au ki tētai wā tātou whānau e parekura mōhio ana koe ki te whānau kingi, kei roto ia mātou I Ngāti Kahu, I te mea ko mate tētai wā mātou tamaiti, tamariki o te warikura o te rangi a niweniwa ina nahira takoto mai ana ki roto peria. Hoi no rātou, kia rātou te hongo mate, tātou anō kia tātou e noho nei, hako ko tehea te taho te whare tēnā koutou ki ora tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker, this week is a very significant week in the history of Aotearoa because it's the 5th birthday of the arrival on the steps of this very parliament of Te Hiko I Taku Taimoana, the Foreshore and Seabed March of 2004, when 40,000 Māori gathered in Parliament grounds after marching from Te Rerenga Wairua, crossing tribal boundaries, gathering strength every day and uniting tribes in a way that had not been seen for decades. A week when Māoridom signalled their refusal to be cowed by the threat to steal their foreshore and seabed, when Māoridom finally realised that the 70 years of loyalty they had given blindly and willingly was being thrown back in their faces. When Māori chose to turn their backs on the Labour Party and turn instead to one another for support and to the newly formed Māori Party for the independence that they had craved for generations. A party who now graced this House as the very first independent Māori political party to take seat in the New Zealand House of Representatives, a party proud to stand alongside the Honourable Dr. Peter Sharples as the first Māori member of this Parliament in the history of this country to ever present a bill to this House as Minister of Māori Affairs, representing the only independent Māori political force ever to make it into Parliament. Mr. Speaker, this is an historical occasion, and for all of these reasons and more, I am proud to stand here today and to pledge the Māori Party's support for this bill. And to see how far we've come in such a short time, I decided to look back through Hansard to see what the Māori Party's other co-leader was doing during those traumatic times which surrounded the first reading of the Foreshore and Seabed Bill. And I note the debate led by Michael Cullen, Don Brash, Winston Peters, followed by Parekura Horomia, Jeanette Fitzsimons, Metidi Atude and Richard Prebble. And then I see that the Honourable Tariana Turia sought leave to speak, but her request was denied by the ACT Party because she had recently been dumped by Labour for refusing to bow to the dictates of the party hierarchy. And the debate continued with Peter Dunn, after which Tariana Turia rose again and was denied again. So the debate continued with Nanaya Mahuta, after which John Tamihere sought leave for Tariana Turia to speak. A call denied, just like in the Bible, for a third time. And I tender the thanks of the Māori Party to him for his gracious and unselfish action. Mita Ririnui rose to speak and offered to stand aside in order that Tariana Turia could be heard. And Tariana's words rang out with a truth that time itself cannot silence. And she said, "What has been taken away is not just tupuna rights, which Māori may have been able to establish. What is also under compromise is the right to justice in the hands of the court. We will not sit down and accept the compromise of basic rights, a denial of our tikanga, a belittling of our status as Indigenous peoples. We will not be relegated to second-class citizens in our own land. We are tangata whenua and we are proud of it. It is that pride and determination," she said, "that will drive us in the next hiko to the ballot box. We can determine our own future, and we will." And if I might add, Mr. Speaker,
Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, I sort of hesitate because this is clearly a well-prepared speech that the members worked on for some time. The problem I have is that it doesn't at the moment yet appear to address the third reading of this legislation. I think we're getting a very interesting treatise on Maori representation in New Zealand and rights and the history of members in this Parliament on other issues and other bills, but this is a bill which I think is a phase which is meant to bring together the debates on this legislation, but to focus on the legislation in front of the House, or at least give fairly regular passing reference to it, and we haven't had that yet.
The Speaker's rulings 1167 and 1173 advise that members should confine themselves to the general principle of the bill as it emerges from the committee, the general principles of the bill. And I'd invite the member to address the bill in its general principles. He may, of course, draw on other elements to expand on the points that the member is making.
Tēnā koe. Tēnā tātou anō. Mr. Speaker, in reference to this Maori Trustee Amendment Bill, I'd just like to say that I've gone back over this time to remind us all of the massive changes to this Parliament over those 5 short years, and to remind us that today is indeed a day when Māori can all be proud of the standing of the independent Māori voice in Parliament, that is the Māori Party. Mr. Speaker, the Maori Trustee Amendment Bill affects Māori in many ways. It will have an immediate impact on those who have land administered by the Maori Trustee. It delivers on a positive future for owners while respecting the legacy of those who have gone before, and it realises a deeply held desire by Māori people generally and by the Māori Party in particular that the Maori Trustee become a standalone body. Mr. Speaker, throughout the debate on this bill, many speakers have referred to the influence of paternalistic bureaucracy, a concern raised time and time again by the beneficial owners about the independence of the Maori Trustee from the Crown. And we congratulate the Minister for recognising the desire of those beneficial owners of Māori land that they be consulted on how the Maori Trustee can best meet their needs. And we recognise in this bill the foundation to ensure that the Maori Trustee can meet its obligations to those beneficial owners. Mr. Speaker, this bill will enable the transfer of staff from the existing structure to the new standalone entity so that no time is lost in retraining. And the bill also puts a greater focus on transparency so that beneficial owners of Māori land can have a great understanding of exactly how the Māori Trustee meets its responsibilities. Mr. Speaker, this bill also puts to rest a rather clumsy and unseemly attempt by the previous government to try to justify the taking of $35 million, which should rightfully go back to the beneficial owners, and give it to another organisation whose trustees would have been chosen by the Minister of Māori Affairs himself. Mr. Speaker, this bill provides for the appointment of a Deputy Māori Trustee to ensure the new organisation keeps functioning effectively in the absence of the Trustee, and provides sound principles on how the new standalone Māori Trustee organisation will be founded and run. Mr. Speaker, the Māori Party supports the passing of the Māori Trustee Bill. We have every confidence that the Minister of Māori Affairs will ensure appropriate consultation in the appointment of the Māori Trustee, and we extend our best wishes to the group for a successful future. In closing, Mr. Speaker, let me not let this moment pass without my offering my congratulations to the Honourable Dr. Peter Sharples and the Honourable Tariana Turia for the leadership they have provided the Māori Party and indeed the Māori people, as we again pay tribute to this very first bill, this Māori Trustee Amendment Bill, introduced by a Minister of Māori Affairs, from a party chosen by, representative of, and accountable to the Māori people themselves. This is a huge moment in our history as a nation. 5 years ago this week, the Honourable Tariana Turia said, "We can determine our own future, and we will." And today we add the final words to that prophecy, "Indeed we are." Kia ora tātou.